Marshall knew that when he was younger, he wanted to be a rescue pup. He had heard stories about how his parents always saved lives when they were top fire pups back in the old days. When he met Ryder and the other pups of Paw Patrol, it seemed like a chance to follow in his parents' paws and be a great fire pup as well. Marshall was proud of his accomplishments, but today wasn't one of those days. It was actually one of those really bad, klutzy days. Already he broke a farmer apples, caused by the mayor to get into an accident, and maybe peed in a bush that was home to an angry, wet squirrel. On his way home to the lookout, he felt like a cloud was hanging over his head, ready to pour. I can't do anything right. Seriously, all I've done today is mess everyone's day. Hey, Marshall, cried out Zuma as he turned around and saw him alongside Chase, Sky, and Rocky by a volleyball net. Want to play some volleyball, dude? He kicked the ball over to Marshall, who stopped and stared at it. As much as he loved to play, he didn't think his bad luck streak was going to help. I don't know. Come on, said Rocky, shaking his tail. Just pass the ball. Marshall smirked and nodded. Okay, check this move out. He knocked over the ball into the air with his nose and jumped for a spike. Closing his eyes, he brought his paw down hard as he could until he heard the sound of something crashing that made his heart sink. Uh-oh. Opening his eyes as he landed, he saw that all 4 of his friends were wrapped up in the net and hanging in the air. Marshall gave a nervous smile and stepped back as his friends glared at him. Nice spike, muttered Chase, before the ball came down and hit him on the head, bringing the 4 down with a crash. Marshall quickly stopped the ball from leaving the area before returning to the others who were helping each other out. Sorry about that, guys. Want me to help you out too? No! They shouted, making him step back. Chase sighed. I think you've done enough for one day, Marshall. Oh, okay. Sorry, whispered the Dalmatian, whimpering. The others all looked at each other with angry expressions. But before they could do anything, Rubble rushed over to the lookout. Guys, the new Apollo's The Super Pup cartoon is now on. This instantly brought a cheer to all the pups as they barked with joy. Each of them made their way towards the lookout. But before Marshall could enter, Rocky stopped him with his paw. Hey, you made a mess. You gotta clean it up. He pointed at the volleyball equipment. Marshall nodded and understanding rushed over towards the net. First, he gathered the poles, deciding to bring them inside first. Then took them with his mouth. Just as he was about to put them in the shed, he suddenly found his paw on the volleyball that he had rolled over. Whoa, he shouted, the ball rolling under his feet as he began to spin around and roll around. The poles in his mouth were starting to become loose as he tried to gain some sense of balance. He found himself rolling onto the living room from the outside of the door, where the pups were all laughing at the cartoon on the big screen. Marshall tried to give off a warning, but he finally lost his balance and fell forward with a big crash. Even worse, the poles flew straight out of his mouth and towards his friends. Look out! The pups all turned around and gasped before ducking as the poles sailed over them. Marshall sighed in relief upon seeing that his friends unhurt, but gasped when the pole smashed into the TV, breaking it and shutting the cartoon off for static. Everyone gasped in horror upon seeing their TV ruined, but then that quickly changed into rage when they glared at Marshall, who was doing his best to act like an invisible mouse. Cowering before his friends, Marshall knew he had screwed up big time, and unlike his previous mistakes, this one he couldn't counter with a joke. So sorry, he whimpered. Sorry? Sorry? Shouted Chase, growling at the fire pup. All you ever say is sorry. You could have hurt us with your clumsy attitude. Even worse, you broke our TV. Can't you do anything right, Marshall? Now we'll never see how the Apollo saves a day, shouted Rubble, who looked more disappointed than anything. No one was more of a fan of Superdog than him. He growled at a rare feat, as usually did the kind and gentle Bulldog. Why can't you just be like the rest of us and not mess things up? I don't mean to, muttered Marshall, tears forming in his eyes. Doesn't matter. Every day, every time, you always screw things up. I don't even know why you're still in Paw Patrol if all you do is make disasters all the time, screamed Sky, getting the nod of approval from the others. Seriously, dude, this is not cool, said Zuma, shaking his head before turning away. Maybe you should go mess someone else's fun, muttered Rocky, before following Zuma. The rest followed suit, the last being Chase, who Marshall couldn't believe he was even doing this. They had been best friends ever since they met, and there was the one who Marshall cared about the most. Chase, do you really have to see me like that? Marshall, sometimes you really are an annoyance, said Chase, shaking his head. That was too much for Marshall. He just started crying and ran out of the lookout as fast as he could. Chase then froze when he saw this and was about to call out to his name, but stopped and shook his head. Maybe he'll finally stop being so clumsy. Still, a part of Chase wondered if he went too far. Hiding in his doghouse, Marshall never cried as hard as he did in his life until now. Hugging his pillow, he continued to sob into it until he felt that his heart had shattered into pieces. His own friends, like the pups he had worked and played with for years, hated him. Hearing such awful things and his so-called friends said about him, he could still hear them in his head. Even Chase, who was still like a brother to him, called him an annoyance. They hate me. All of them. And worst of all, they're right. How many times had he been to klutz and ruined their games or fun? How many times did he screw up on a mission? He was a walking disaster, and it was better for everyone if he wasn't around. Removing his head from his tear-soaked pillow, he glanced at the photo of him and his parents, dressed in firefighter gear. Who am I kidding? I'll never be as great as Mom and Dad. I shouldn't have even been in Paw Patrol. Marshall stood up and walked outside, where he saw Adventure Bay. The town had been his home for years, and he had protected and helped so many people there. But it looked like it was all over now. If my friends don't want me, then maybe I should live somewhere else, away from Paw Patrol, someplace they'll never find me. He glanced down over towards the snowy mountains, came to the realization. That's it! I'll just live up in the mountains. It's got snow, cute penguins, and I could still help people by finding lost skiers. Plus, Everest and Jake live nearby, and they don't hate me. Maybe I can convince them to keep my location a secret from the others. With all of his mind set, Marshall began to packing for his new life. Dog treats, chew toys, food, water bottles, blankets, winter gear, my pup pack. Well, looks like I got everything, thought Marshall. He wrapped them all up and put them in his trunk. Marshall donned in his uniform. He got on his fire truck and turned it on. Stopped himself before hitting the gas pedal. Turned towards the tower for one last look. The lookout had been such a great place to live, and being a part of Paw Patrol were some of the best times of his life. Ryder had been a good owner and the best big brother ever. Chase was his best friend and always looked after him. Everyone else was like family to him, and he thought their days of their friends would never end. Until now. So long, Paw Patrol, whimpered Marshall, before he pressed on the gas pedal and quietly left the lookout. Hours had passed since the spat with Marshall and the other pups were bored out of their mind. They had told Ryder that the TV was broken, and he had said he would get a new one. That meant still no Apollo or even Pup Boogie, another thing to be angry at Marshall about. Currently they were at each other doing their own thing to stave off the boredom. Rocky was reading a book about Thomas Edison. Rubble and Zuma were napping under a tree. Chase was doing push-ups, and Sky was flicking a rock back and forth. Ugh, I'm so bored, whined Sky, as she rolled onto her stomach and glanced up at the sky. It looked like it wasn't going to be any bad weather, so it kind of gave her an idea. I'm going to ask Ryder if I could fly today, she said as she got up and headed for the lookout. "'Kay," said Chase and Rocky, while Zuma and Rubble just snored. While watching Sky leave, Chase stopped doing his push-ups and turned to Rocky. "Hey, Rocky, do you think we were a little harsh on Marshall?" Rocky paused before turning the page before saying, "Maybe, but can you honestly tell me you haven't always wanted to yell at him for his mistakes?" Chase stayed silent, but his gut was telling him that something might be wrong. He got up and stretched his legs. "I'm gonna go talk to him." He didn't even wait for a response. He just rushed to the other side of the lookout, where Marshall's doghouse was. But when he arrived, he grounded to a halt at the sight of nothing. The fire truck was gone, as was Marshall. "Marshall? Marshall?" Chase cried out, but there was no response. Concerned, he tapped onto his communicator for a tag from Marshall. "Hey, Marshall, you there?" No response. "Marshall?" When he got a silence for the second time, Chase felt worry in his gut even more. Guess he's still mad at us, or maybe Ryder has him doing something. He quickly called for his owner. Ryder was just about to finish the latest level of space shooter video game when he got a call from Chase coming in. Pausing, he accepted the message and saw Chase's face on the pup pad. Hey Chase, what's up? Ryder, sir, have you seen Marshall? His truck is missing, and I can't find him, said Chase, looking around in worry. No, I haven't. I'll call him up and see where he is, answered Ryder as he turned off Chase and called for his fire pup. A few seconds later, he saw Marshall driving his truck. Hello? Asked Marshall, a bit surprised that he was being contacted. Hey Marshall, where are you? The pups are looking for you, Ryder said. Upon hearing this, Marshall closed his eyes before growling, much to Ryder's surprise. Marshall? I don't care. Tell the other pups that I'm done being a bother to them, if they don't have to worry about me anymore. If I'm such an annoyance with them like they said, then I'm better off on my own. I'm done with them, and Paw Patrol, answered Marshall, clearing to try to hide a tear dripping down his cheek. Ryder gasped as he held the pad in both of his hands. Dozens of questions entered Ryder's mind, but the first thing he had to do was to calm Marshall down and get him to explain. Marshall, you can't quit. The team needs you. Look, just come home and we'll sort this out. Marshall shook his head. Sorry, Ryder, but I made up my mind. I'm a lone pup now. I'm gonna miss you. Thank you for taking care of me. Marshall let out for the last time. The communication was cut as Ryder stood there, still in disbelief. He tried calling Marshall again and again, but nothing. Marshall had cut him off. As Ryder tried to think about what to do, Sky came up with the elevator with a smile. Hey Ryder, I was wondering if I can go flying since it's a great day. What did you guys say to Marshall? Ryder shouted, before turning around with Tyria's scolding look. Sky gasped and whimpered upon hearing her owner's angry tone. Answer me, Sky! Now! We were just angry that he messed up the TV and we may have... Sky shivered as her ears flattened as Ryder's glare got harsher and harsher. Told him that he was a burden to the team and said he screwed up a lot, amongst other things. Ryder rubbed his temples and did his best to keep calm. Getting too angry right now would not solve anything. He needed to get Marshall home and needed to get the rest of the pups to help, even if they were the ones that caused this. Well, I hope you're happy, Sky, because Marshall decided to run away. Run away? Shouted Sky in horror. I didn't think he'd take it that bad. It's Marshall. He's always happy. Would you be happy if your best friends call you worthless and insulted you, breaking your spirit? Ryder asked. Sky lowered her head and in shame began to cry. What do we have done? Marshall. She then looked at her head. We have to get him back, Ryder. He's part of the team. And we're going to get him back, Sky. Ryder then pressed all the buttons of the Paw Patrols. Sky just sat there praying that Marshall was all right and that they could fix the mistake. Oh, Marshall, I'm so sorry. How could we have said those things? Paw Patrol, look out, now. The rest of the pups knew that something was wrong by the tone of Ryder's voice and urgency behind it. None of the others could do their usual call-out, and they rushed in quickly as they could towards the elevator. On the way, Rubble looked around and asked, Hey, where's Marshall? He's not here, answered Chase, as they entered the doors. Even his truck is gone. I hope nothing happened to him. The four reached to the elevator and waited and waited. This is weird, Zuma said, looking around. We're all still standing. Usually when Marshall's here, we're all on our backs. Yeah, without him, it just seems empty, Rocky said. The others nodded in agreement as the elevator started to move, getting to their uniforms as they jumped out and lined up against the downtrodden Sky as Chase stood in attention. Paw Patrol, ready for action! Super Spy Chase's voice died down when he and all the other pups met with an angry Ryder, gulping as Chase finished. Ryder, sir? Ryder, with his arms crossed, stayed silent for a bit before shaking his head. Pups, I'm really disappointed in you. What? But why? They all said, except for Sky. Because I had to find out that you five insulted and bullied Marshall earlier for making a mistake, pointed out Ryder. The others winced as Rocky whispered, We were just angry. Well, I hope that you're happy because your angry words have forced Marshall to run away. All the four pups gasped as Sky silently cried. Chase, turning nearly white, pressed his commuter tag. Marshall, come in, buddy, please. The Elvers had tried their tags as well, but they got nothing. Zuma shook his head. Marshall wouldn't run away. He loves being a Paw Patrol. He loves us. But we were really hard on him, muttered Rubble, doing his best not to cry. He must have think we hate him. What have we done? Whispered Rocky. Chase, to everyone, in surprise, began to turn around before hitting his paws on the elevator. Stupid. So stupid. How could I have said that to him? How I called him an annoyance. An annoyance! What kind of a leader am I? What kind of friend am I? Chase howled in anger, before falling on his haunches and began to tear up. How could I have said those things? Ryder walked up to him and held him, letting the super spy pup cry on his shoulder. As mad as he was at them, he knew that they were just as hurt about Marshall leaving. The other pups were just as emotional as Chase, and seeing the strongest of them act like this has brought their seriousness straight home. Rubble gulped as he wiped the tears from his face. What are we gonna do? We don't know where Marshall is. What if we never see him again? Shouted Sky with worry. We have to find him, shouted Rocky, stepping forward, and we have to tell him how much we care about him. We have to say we're sorry. Right you are, Rocky, Ryder said, getting up and grabbing his pad. We need all paws on deck for this one. Each of us will be splitting up to find Marshall. Zuma, you could check the bent beaches and water. Rubble, you check the outskirts of town like Yumi's farm. Rocky, I will check the town. Chase, you and Sky will check the forest and mountains area. If any of you guys see or have a hint of where Marshall is, call us. The pups didn't even bother to shout out their catchphrases. The situation was all just too serious. All they had to think about was Marshall and his safety. Ryder then headed for the pole towards his ATV, where the pups went through the slide and into their respective vehicles.